Hey guys, here we are, tally the votes. We are here to cover episode 21 and episode 22 of Australian Survivor, season 10. We've got the penultimate, we've got everything narrowing down, and we've got players in playpens. Uh, maybe Maybe it, did something for the game. Maybe not. But we're going to discuss that, and we're gonna cover what we think and feel about everything. If you're in the chat, feel free to chime in with whatever your thoughts are on this isolation twist, and if it was pointless, or did we get some good gameplay? What do you think, David?
Pointless. Literally pointless. It changed nothing.
Did nothing. It didn't. It didn't change a thing, did it?
No. Well, part of that is because the alliance, I think, is more solid than the editing would try to have us believe.
Yeah.
Certainly, Nina said it. She said, I can't crack this alliance, right? And I think they're trying to look for something that, is good TV.
Yeah, sure.
So they made it seem like Jerry was going to find out that George betrayed him because he threw him one vote out of 6. Like, anyone's really going to get that torqued over it.
Yeah. It would have been even more pointless, as we discussed last week, if it had been like, Nina and Simon, because they're on the same page. I think that maybe, I don't know. What do you think if we would have had like Nina and Matt? Do you think that would have maybe given us maybe a little more headway in changing things, like maybe a little push?
It potentially could have made a difference if they weren't allowed to have contact with the rest of the team.
See, and that's how I felt. I thought to myself, like, well, this isn't really what isolation is. This isn't isolating. If they can come and talk whenever they want to, there's no time frame on it. They can just come and chit chat. Like, really, all that's happening is that Nina can hear what you're saying, right?
Well, and they certainly didn't care about that. That was funny.
No, like they just said what they needed to say.
They came to talk to Jerry and just ignored her.
Yeah, so maybe in the future, if they're going to do an isolation, they really do need to actually isolate. Like, they could even do it like they did this, but just nobody's allowed to go and talk to them.
Right, and you could even make it like a pseudo reward, like they get food, and they sit there and give them a bottle of champagne and a 6-pack of beer and see what that.
Oh yeah,
does.
Give them there you go.
Booze.
Little bit of alcohol, never hurt for drama's sake. Yeah,
Big Brother has taught us that.
Yeah, those booze deliveries, they make for good TV nights. It's for sure.
They truly do. But yeah, I felt like the twist. I tried to think in what scenario would it have mattered, and I can't really think of one. It wasn't the most creative, great twist.
And to Nina's credit, she did break it down. And she was pretty relentless. Like, she stayed on top of, like, pointing everything out to Jerry. Oh, do you see how he just did this? Well, he did that because of this. And he made a final 3 with this person, this person, this person, this person.
If only she would have started playing on day 1, not day 36.
I think that Nina played a little bit more than we saw, but I'm not going to say she was like neat. She wasn't like Simon deep in the action, right? Like,
no, because I think she thought if she held back, she could float along, and that's what she was doing, and that's her mom's game to an extent.
And realistically,
if no one's talking about voting her, Sandra's like, okay, good, I'll just do whatever you want.
Realistically, if this alliance wasn't just so like locked, if it wasn't just as locked as it is, the game that she has played, that she played up to this point, it wasn't a really dramatically flawed game. It had good sittings in there. It's just she was going up against something that wasn't going to budge. It didn't matter if it was Nina. It didn't matter if it was Simon. It didn't matter if it was Sam or if it was Shoni. It didn't matter. Like it didn't matter who you were.
No, but I will say, I think she made, and I had made comments about it earlier with, she certainly channeled her mother with sitting half the season during the challenges.
Sit and watch.
And look, we just saw on US Survivor how that plays out sometimes.
Yes, but here's the thing on that. There was rules at one point in time.
The rules still exist in Australia. You can't sit two in a row.
That you can't sit back to back.
Right.
Those rules were removed. That rule was removed in the US. So we did see how that played out. But before the
that
removal
rule's going to go
those,
back in, I bet. Jeff didn't seem to like it.
No. And before the removal of that rule, it really didn't actually hurt too much, because the only time that hurts your game is if the tribe you're in isn't getting what it needs and you're having to go to tribal. When you have a 2-person tribe, that's far less likely a problem than it is on like a 4-person tribe. So again, that's one of the disadvantages of these smaller tribes that we're seeing in the US. But in Australia, Nina's plan wasn't a bad plan, and how she played the game wasn't necessarily, she didn't play it poorly. I think that Nina's biggest downfall was 2 things. One, the specific tribe the alliance she was up against, not her tribe. Her tribe loved her. She was so popular in her tribe. The jury is mostly her tribe. She wasn't in a horrible position there. Where she messed up herself was just her mouth. Just her mouth. It was just the words that she said at the wrong time.
Well, and I think she could have came over to George and really worked him and played his ego and said, I'm with you 100% and I'm going to be a mole with the others. Yep. And he's an amazing
player. He's an amazing player, but he's not infallible. Like, there is some place you can get, you can work it somewhere. But she made
I don't know. I love his game.
I do too. Now, she did mess up herself when she said, well, I'm going to vote Jerry out. And she said it in front of Jerry. And it started drama within the alliance. And that worked into a panic, into tribal, which kind of pushed George moving in a direction he wasn't really planning on moving on initially, which created more of a problem for Nina going forward. So it was her own words and her own timing that messed it up. Her inability to have a good liar's face when it came down to the whole thing with Jordy, when they were like, pick somebody.
Right.
And then again, in these 2 episodes, it's not in 21, I believe it was in 22, where, Liz said, hey, don't worry, she's not going to say anything to anybody. She won't say anything to Matt, because George was worried, as long as she doesn't say anything to Matt. And the first thing she does is go and tells Matt, like, you are Nina. You can use the tools that your mother has taught you and given you, and you can use them greatly, but you are not your mother. And some people can just say something like that, like Sandra, and it does nothing to harm them. Nina does not have that magic. She just doesn't.
No, and really, I think at that point, again, the alliance was stronger than we were led to believe. She knew she was out. She was playing Chaos Cass at that point.
Yeah, we're going to just have to throw out whatever. Yep.
Everything I can do to try to get these people to argue with each other.
And I think that's where Simon was at too. I mean, Simon was starting to see the writing in the sand. Now, when we get through our competitions, Simon does not win immunity, and I was rooting for him. Were you kind of rooting for him?
I have to say, if you go back and you watch earlier in the season, I was not a Simon fan.
Yeah, no, I don't think.
And I remember talking about the fact that he comes off as such an arrogant jerk on the show, but yet everyone who knows him in real life talks about what a prince he is, right? Yep. Well, I saw that later in the season, where he really was funny. He was self-deprecating. He was, and when he started winning challenges and they couldn't throw him out, you kind of had to root for him a little bit. down deep. I don't think you're a Survivor fan if you didn't feel some empathy for him and want him to
I think
stick
that
around.
you have, I think in the first half of the game, you had Simon, the player that wanted to come across as a certain way, and he can't play a role. He can only play himself. And when he finally stopped trying to play a role, and then it's like, oh, okay, now
but even
get
later in the game, when he started winning, as soon as he felt like he had something going, he was constantly like, I'm the Kingslayer. No, you're Simon. Don't be the Kingslayer.
Stop it.
Just be the guy we like.
Just don't do that. Yeah. I mean, it coins.
They're not going to nickname you the Golden God, dude. They're not. It's already taken.
No, in fact, I've named you Cookie Butt, and that's going to stick. And that's it forever, Cookie Butt. Also, like, I mean, even George knows it. I think that's half of the reason why George was always kind of like irritated by him. Like, he's amused by him, right? But kind of irritated too. Like, just stop trying to be what you are not. You're Simon. I mean, when you had the one hinky vote, for George immediately knew, poor Simon. Like, he immediately knew.
Isn't that the magic of George's game? He's actually being George.
Yeah, he's not right.
I mean, yes, some of the cold, calculated moves aren't really him, because you see him on Twitter and on Instagram hanging out with Haley and hanging out. He was at Flick's wedding, and they all seem to really like him. So,
sure. I don't think he's disliked. I mean, and that is something too that I really
he was disliked in the first.
Exactly. And I think that that's something that I really, really enjoy about this season of Survivor, regardless of it, not just like Survivor Australia, but Survivor as a franchise, because here you have somebody who is, by all accounts, the villain, right? He even is on the villain tribe. He is the villain. However, nobody hates him. Like, nobody really hates him there. Nobody is there going like, oh God, I can't stand this guy. And previously, we have
they wanted him out literally every week. I mean,
yeah, right. But they want him out because he's going to be devastating to their chances to win. And
the first time they wanted him out because they hated him.
Yes. See, and there's so many other seasons internationally where you have someone that falls into that villain, the evil genius archetype. But they don't.
Well, Russell Hantz is probably the extreme example.
But they don't like the personality.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just the living with situation. They don't care for that person. They don't like that person. And George does have something very unique in his ability to play the evil genius moves. But he still comes to you as a friend.
And I think he has that flamboyant, fabulous kind of thing.
Yeah, there's just like some charm and some flair that
the charm and the flair work for him.
Yeah, demands a little bit of attention
and frankly, it works better for him than it does for a straight guy like Simon, who looks like he's forcing it. I don't know why that is.
Because it's just because that's who he is. He's not, like I said with Simon, as soon as Simon stopped trying to play the game like George,
right,
and started to play the game like Simon, he instantly became somebody you kind of wanted to root for.
He was becoming a fan favorite. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if he gets to the end with anybody but George, he doesn't win.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when he goes to his jury villa, okay, first of all, the jury villas this year are like, the energy is like entirely different than last season's energy of jury villa. Yeah. I mean, like, this time, these people know how to party. They're happy to see each other. There's a lot of congratulations. But I loved seeing it with Simon and Nina's this week too, where they were both brought in with like so much love and excitement, and so many people saying like, we were really rooting for you guys. Like,
and how they really rooting for you. To act like they're mad for a second. Like, they've done that. I think with Sean, they did that. They're like, nah, mate, it's all good.
Like, we're kidding. Yeah, I love this jury's energy. Like, you can tell that this isn't a bunch of first timers. They are just enjoying every minute of their experience.
The only person in the jury house I think is angry, and I think there's one person that's angry, and I think it's Sam.
Like a little miffed.
I think if you pulled his fingernails out, he wouldn't vote for George. I think he's bitter. The rest of them are all, it's a game. I don't know why.
Sure.
But the way his body language at Tribal, he doesn't like him, and it's obvious to me.
Maybe there were some conversations that just weren't part of the game, and maybe it's just a general just don't like each other situation. I mean, you are dealing with a lot of people out on an island when it's hot and you're tired and you're stressed out and you're not sleeping well. And surely at some point you're going to run into someone you just don't like and you can't get excited for because you just don't like them.
Right.
And maybe that's the case. I guess we'll find out when we get to see our votes next week. I don't really have a whole lot of more notes here on episode 21. But there is one thing I do think we need to cover in the Tribal, and I know it's been spoke about a lot in social media, but that is Jerry's, Jerry's question to Simon, because first of all, Jonathan asks about pawns to Simon and Simon's face just like lights up. He's so excited to talk. He finally, this is his moment. He gets to say all these things he's been practicing, all the lines that production has been helping him memorize.
That he says backwards or sideways.
He says backwards. He's so excited. And then he starts talking about that, like, do you want to play as a pawn and so on. And Jerry, I get how Jerry wants to defend his game that he's not a pawn. Anybody in Jerry's position needs to defend their role, and with the jury sitting right there and convince the jury that they're not pawns. I think that Jerry's wordage that he tried to use to defend himself was like a piss poor analogy or whatever.
It wasn't the greatest analogy, but like George has said in front of the jury, my social game came from Shawnee. She taught me that.
Mm-hmm.
I watched her and I learned what she was doing. And
sure.
That's what Jerry was trying to say. I think what he was trying to set up was, I played with George, I learned from George, I cut George, and I beat George. That's where he was going with it.
I think that that part's fine. I honestly, I can't begrudge that part. But when he tries to
the mentor thing, yeah.
Pat down Simon with that mentor thing. One, it was a bad analogy. Fine. That was dumb. But what killed me was that Simon didn't have the faculty nor the agency. Take a shot to
do you think he got to the jury vote and said, I need a dictionary. I need to know what agency means.
I don't know what agency means.
Saying
they telling me to say it. But he had the one and only opportunity that anybody is going to really have with Jerry. Basically, all of the things that Nina was trying to get through Jerry's head while they're sitting in isolation, Simon had that one singular moment to maybe budge Jerry, not for Simon's own being saved that night, but maybe for Jerry's moves going forward. And that is that he should have said, the difference between a mentor and somebody you're in competition with is that you aren't ultimately trying to take down your mentor and win a game. My bodybuilder, right? My physical trainer is there to help me be the best future father I can be, right? But George, he's just taking $500,000 away from your kids. That's right. What you're allowing him to do, is to take $500,000 right out from underneath you and your kids. And that is all he had to say, because the only thing Jerry gives a flying F about in all of this is his children. That's why he's playing the game. He wants them to be able to take the business. It wouldn't have saved Simon, but it would have had way more of an impact.
Here's how he should have answered the question. He should have said, Jonathan, you know what? When I called them pawns, I was upset. I was angry. You know what? That's not really the right word. What I was trying to express is I feel like the jury thinks they're followers, and that they haven't made the moves and they're simply following George. And I've seen with my own eyes that Jerry is making game moves and Matt is making game moves. They're not showing it, and they're coming across as pawns. I wasn't calling them pawns. I was trying to explain how they were perceived. And I really feel bad because I think I hurt their feelings. And that would have been the speech.
And see, it's really funny because Matt can hear these words. This just shows you the difference in personality, age, experience, whatever. Matt can hear these words that Simon's saying, and he can kind of roll his eyes about because he knows Simon's just trying to get digs in. But he also, it got his wheels turning. Like, right. Well, he's making a good point because if I sit next to him at the end, I have to have a defense on why I deserve this over him. And then he has to go through and say, here's all the moves George has made. Here's the competitions I've won. How do I separate myself right now to show that I had my own agency in this game that wasn't just for George's benefit? But unfortunately, I don't. And don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that he doesn't, but it does mean that production has not given us very many confessionals from Jerry, who has had 2 all year, by the way, 2.
No, there's more than that now because he had like 4 of that
2
episode.
He's had 2. Nope, he's had 2. And he is
first of all, like I don't know that I don't buy those confessional accounts on Facebook because George goes, of course I'm panicking. They go, that's a confessional for George.
No.
And then
I
Liz
mean, like
for 7 minutes, and that's one confessional.
There hasn't been anything where Jerry has said, okay, yeah, George is doing this, but he thinks I'm a pawn, but what he doesn't see is I'm doing this. Jerry has nothing to offer because Jerry isn't doing something behind the scenes. Jerry is literally just saying, okay, whatever you want, George. Okay, whatever you want, George. And the only time he ever says anything in opposition of George is, tonight's not the night. And then he votes with George anyway. Jerry is just playing George's game. And I'm not even coming in a negative place with that. But he needs to set himself apart. And unfortunately for Jerry, I think that after he gave that little speech to Simon and the speech about George, I think if Jerry wanted to win the game, it would have been at that moment, and it would have been to vote George out directly after saying that. I learned from the best, period.
Here's the thing. Jerry's better off going with George than with Liz or with Matt.
I don't think so. I don't think Jerry has a leg in this win. There's no win. Jerry is not. Matt has competitions. He did work with George. He didn't always work with George. At one point, he was against George.
Well, Jerry has a little bit of a resume. He was cast away by his tribe. He went back and tried to rebuild fences. They cast him out again. He came over. I mean,
I honestly do not think Jerry sees that as any. I don't think that they see that as a benefit. But Matt,
I have 2 words for you. 2 words for you when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Gabler edit.
Gabler won competitions. Gabler went against his own tribe's votes. Gabler still played his own game in plain sight. But he still played his own game. Jerry hasn't made the moves Gabler did.
And Cassidy was horribly unlikable. But
I have blood pouring from down the back of my throat right now, biting my tongue so much because I'm having to say something nice about him. But Gabler's game was better than Jerry's game on an individual level.
Well, and Cassidy's too, obviously, because we know how the jury voted.
Now, here's the deal. We've got Simon going home. Jury's like, oh, rats, because we really wanted to root for you. Matt's had a handful of competition wins. He was at one point up against George. Somehow he got George to keep him over Stevie. There's a few things he can feed the jury and for them to respect it. Liz,
I don't know that he's capable of making the argument, but okay.
Liz may be a little bit. I think Liz and Matt are so equally bound in different ways. Liz has got a few competitions, but I think Liz can articulate her right to be there. Maybe a little more convincingly than Matt. But her resume may not be as impressive as Matt.
Before we talk about Final Tribal, let's talk about where we're at right now. So you're at the Final 4, right? And they'll have an immunity competition, and one of the 4 people will win. Okay? If George wins, it'll be a miracle, but it could happen. If George wins, I don't know what will happen because there's a lot of permutations with that. My sense is Liz goes home because Jerry and Matt will combine to vote out Liz. If Liz wins immunity, Matt and Jerry will vote out George. We'll vote out George.
You think so? You do? You think
Liz will make the play to move Matt out, which is what she should want.
And it should be what she wants. And
maybe George will force it to go to rocks or fire. What do they do on AU? I can't remember.
But for plenty of episodes or a couple of weeks, I've been saying I could see Liz cutting George at the end. But does she cut George, or does she truly think Matt is her biggest competitor?
She clearly wants Matt out, and Matt clearly wants her out. That's why George is in a better position than most people think.
That's why George made the decision that he did to keep who he kept, because he knew keeping Matt and Jerry was in his best interest.
And that's why people who say, "Oh, Nina said this and it changes," his mind was made up before he ever walked into that tribal. He knew he couldn't keep her and that he had to pit Liz against Matt.
Before we get into this last episode coverage here, also, when we're talking about that final tribal, we still don't know if we're doing final 3 or final 2. It still hasn't been announced.
No, it's likely to be a 2 only because if they toss somebody on Sunday, what are they going to do? Just then go directly to the jury on Monday?
I don't know how.
That would be unusual. It could happen, and they're talking about a twist. And I have avoided the spoilers on the twist, and some of the pages have them out there.
Yeah, so steer clear. Steer clear.
There's this whole, are they taking a juror out or whatever? I don't think that's anything.
No, I don't think it'd be anything that big.
No, and that all
would be the point of it.
At the end of Nina's video, they all went somewhere, and Shawnee wasn't there.
Oh,
but that could be as simple as she got up and said, "I'm not doing that."
Yeah, I have a headache right now. I'm going to lay down.
I have a headache. I'll see you all later. Come on.
Well, we've got on our 21, we've got a congratulations, Brecky, morning, coffee, sugar, the lot. So, which is great because we got another everybody's super caffeinated montage, which is really fun.
That was fun, actually.
I mean, who needs booze when you've been deprived of caffeine for a month, right? So they're all super happy, amped as can be, hyper, and just shoveling spoonfuls of sugar down their throat. And we got some talk about Liz seeing how close and how tight the bond is, between George and Jerry. And she's not wrong. I think there is a really close bond there. I think they'll remain a close bond going out.
Well, but do you think it's really close, or do you think that is George setting up the jury to go, "I had to take Jerry. We were so close. We bonded. We became friends for life."
I think that Jerry and George are truly friends, but George is a showman. So he knows he's got to bring him a chair in isolation. And he's the first one whenever Jerry's in competition, to be like, "Oh, there it is, Jerry." All right, Jerry,
But you notice he does that with everybody.
Yeah, bad luck.
Even the people that aren't in my, "Oh, good job, Nina."
Yeah, and that brings up the bad luck, which I love. That is bad luck is so much I don't know. I love it way more than good try.
Yeah.
Bad luck, Jerry.
Bad luck. But tough break, mate.
Tough break, kid. But yeah, he could be he could be emphasizing that relationship and maybe gussing it up just a little bit.
Because clearly that's who he wants to take.
Yeah. Do you know what it kind of reminds me of? It's funny because it's backwards, but it kind of reminds me of last season, the way that Chrissy was with Josh towards the end of the game.
Yep.
Suddenly the caretaker, her brother's keeper kind of thing. And it's George is kind of but it's funny because George is in a far better position on his own than Chrissy was, but he's doing that same bonding, loudly showing the bonds, right?
Yeah.
So do you think that George will like stop in the middle of a competition to go help Jerry? I don't think their bond's that tight.
No, I don't. And but here too, the only person I think left who beats George potentially is Liz. And
see, and that's how personally, that's the way I'm reading it. That's how I see that Liz has a higher potential than Matt does or Jerry does to beat out George.
I don't think Matt has a single jury vote.
But I'm hearing from a lot of longtime podcasters and people that are definitely more experienced in counting the votes than I am, that don't see it that way. They're putting George number one. The overall census is George is number one, obviously. And then there's a lot of debate between whether it's Matt or Liz as number two.
I got to think it's Liz.
I feel like it's Liz. My gut's been telling me it's Liz.
And here's the reason. First of all, Liz has one vote if she goes, because Shawnee will vote for her.
I think she will. I think that
Liz isn't there, Shawnee votes for George over anyone.
Yes.
But she'll vote for Liz first, right?
Yes.
Then let's go to Haley. Who she vote for?
Oh, she's going to vote for Liz over Matt.
No, she's going to vote for George. So
we're taking George out. We're taking George out because
no. Well, let's run through and talk about who their first and second choices would be, and you're going to see real quickly that there's not.
So if you're comparing, first of all, we have to presence this. We're doing two. We're doing final two, not final three. We're doing final two.
Right.
So that means that in order to get to final two, George has to be taken or George has to win.
Right. Well, I think George is going to be taken to final three as long as Liz doesn't win. If Liz wins immunity, George goes home. If Matt or Jerry win immunity, they vote Liz out.
Okay. All right.
Because Matt's going to want Liz gone. Liz is going to want Matt gone because they're not going to want to face each other.
You don't think... which I mean, obviously we don't know, but you don't think that Matt isn't going to take the same opportunity that Liz would have, because otherwise his resume isn't stacked.
No, because the reason is he could lose the final challenge to her. He will not lose the final challenge to George, and he'll get to decide who he's taking with, and that is way more important than a resume.
If it's fire, Matt's got it in the bag.
But they've never done fire. It's not an AU thing.
But if it's fire, Matt's got it in the bag. That quote might mean nothing next week, but it might mean everything next week. So you just tuck that into your pocket, buddy.
No, there's no doubt. But, so that's how I see it. I see George making final three. And then the question is, what if it's a puzzle? What if it's one of those where they write down, it's always been an endurance.
I'm going to be honest with you. George's puzzles have not been impressive this season. I don't know about his first season.
But again, he'd be up against Jerry and Matt.
Yeah.
Matt's not done a lot of puzzles, and Jerry, I wouldn't put bets on.
Poor Jerry. Poor Jerry.
And here's the thing you have to know, is when he went up against Haley in their endurance challenge, he lasted 4.5 hours on little spikes with spikes coming down. Yeah. 4.5 hours. Yeah.
And he won the endurance for chicken. So
and I got to tell you, when they took him down, he could not physically move his legs. Somebody had to come over and help him off the thing.
And you want to know what? I'm also going to just put out there is that there is a very good chance. I'm not saying every single endurance or every single challenge, because he's not a god. He is immortal. But there's a really good chance that there's a couple that he was hanging in there and feeling pretty good about. But what's the point of wasting the energy? He had everything lock, stock. He knew going into tribal where the numbers laid. Why
I always go back to the early edit when he talked about how he went to the gym and he worked in a personal trainer, and I haven't seen any of that. And I got to wonder if he's showing him old George at the challenges.
Yeah.
And then he kind of showed his ass a little because he wanted Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Right. That's what I mean. How does somebody he hasn't done good at the puzzles? He hasn't done good physically. When he is in a group challenge, him and Shawnee, like the most active he was in a group challenge, like the most success he had in a group challenge individually was throwing a challenge with Shawnee.
That was the funniest thing where he was like pretending to push the thing.
Yeah. But there's a chance that maybe he's like, just what was the point? I don't need to push it, and I'm going to push it when I need to.
Well, could you see if he wins 4 and 3? He would then be the greatest player ever.
Yeah, he would be taking the crown, wouldn't he? He would be taking the crown.
He would absolutely own the crown. So
he would own it. He would have it in diamond safe. There'd be like 16 guards on it at all times. Yes. So, but I have to say, Jerry has been setting himself. I mean, for all of the issues that I have had with Jerry's game and his, I think he should defend himself when he's being called upon. But unfortunately, I think the way he defends himself, he just comes across as sounding like a stubborn old man. And that's unfortunate for him, because if you really look at it, Jerry has set himself up in a pretty good position for a long time. It's not a winning position, but it's going to get him, and it has.
I have to point out that the Survivor fandom has more or less eliminated any sort. What happened to my camera here? It doesn't matter. Any sort of bias.
Soft focus.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know why.
Just soft focus.
But they've removed all the bias. But the only bias that's acceptable to Survivor fandom is, well, we can be mean to old people. And I don't know why that is.
You know what? I don't think anybody is mean to the old people.
Well, they're usually the first person out. Why is it doing that?
The first person out is no longer the old people, because we don't even have that old of people in any of them, really. Not like in the first few years of Survivor. Same with Big Brother, like any of these. I mean, at this point in time, we don't get older than 50s, right? Like,
well, I mean, Jerry's 60, but in US, no.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen. For unfortunate reasons too, because in games like Big Brother, you gotta love. It's great having a couple people over the age of 50. I do miss that dynamic.
Well, bring it back. It seems to be the one bias you're allowed to express. Vote out the old people.
Take them out. Throw out the
old
people. They can't walk. They're so old. So, okay. So we covered like the whole idea that like they've talked, they say, okay, this is our moment to get George out. I love how Liz has been trying to handle George in this episode. Kind of like, basically she is doing to George what Nina was doing to Jerry in the previous episode with like, did you notice so-and-so this? Well, they said this because of that. And you're a fool if you think this is going to happen. And you're a fool if that's going to happen. Liz isn't off her mark. She's saying things that he can't really argue with. He's just not going to go along with.
But Liz wanted something, and everyone knew what Liz wanted. She wanted Matt gone.
Yes. But she's very good at pointing out what she wants to have done. I think that her and George have a close enough. They have good dialogue with each other about the pros and cons but he did with Shawnee too. But more than anything, he's really great at just being like, you're right. Yeah, you're right. And honestly, it's what he should have done way back with the Flick vote, right? When they wanted to keep Flick.
Oh, right.
And he should have just been like, you're right. And then did what he wanted to do anyway. Because clearly that's fine. And George can do what he wants to do anyway, because it works out for him. But Liz wasn't saying anything erratic. And of course he said, well, Nina's got to not say anything. And Nina does say things. And then Matt's upset. And it's a whole thing that boils down to going into tribal. And Nina is clearly figuring out that, yeah, there's no way I'm getting out of this. There's no way. But here's the thing. Like you said, George pretty much had his stuff locked tight before he went in there. He had his opinions. He knew what he was going to do.
And then when she said that, she gave him the ability to rationalize.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Unfortunately for Nina, her downfall as a player is her mouth, and I wrote this down because it stuck out so much to me, is that she said the majority stayed solid. And then 20 seconds later, she says The majority is solid. Again, 2 different times she talked about that Alliance is winning because they're not budging or changing their minds.
Right, which is why I tell you the edit that led us to believe that like there was a chance Jerry was bullcrap.
Yeah. I mean,
because she knew going into that tribal she was toast.
But it's also even if you know your game is toast and do you want to leave, like, don't sit there and say, oh, the Alliance is solid. Oh, the Alliance is solid. Stir it up. There's a crowd.
Well, and then when she basically said she'd vote for George. She goes, he's been running everything.
Yeah.
And he sort of went, at that point, if he would have been on the fence, he's like, well, I got her vote. She's going on the jury.
Yes. Nina, you're great. You have a lot of attributes to bring into the game. But holy moly.
Did you see the photo of her and Sandra from when Nina was 5 in Johnny Fairplay?
And she looks just like she does now, except shorter.
It is like it's a little bitty. It's like Grogu on the Mandalorian. She's so cute.
Yeah, well, it's like somebody just like took an image of her and put it on a shrinky dink. You know,
right.
Like it's just her tiny. Yeah,
she looks adorable. Exactly the same. I don't even know that's possible.
Yeah, I did enjoy that, and I
really for a guy who once had hair.
I really loved her, going into the jury villa, and most of her tribe was there, so they were excited to see her. But when she got to go into her apartment, her little apartment, and get her snacks and put on her robe, and then it was like, okay, see, now again, there's these little moments where you're like, if I can see why they liked her, because she is a very likable person. Her social game is good because she does get along with most people. It's just when she gets to be intense, she feels intensely about something, she just doesn't have a good game face. I think that if she could learn that skill and come back in.
And how old is she? Do you know?
She's like in her 20s. She's
like early 20s, though, isn't she?
Yeah, she's a youngin', yeah.
Yeah, she strikes me as somebody who grew up with the phone in her hand, who's not quite.
She's not good at covering,
face to face.
Yeah. I think that she could, just like George has proven, if you are a fan of the game and you study your previous game and not just study what you did right, but really study what you did wrong.
And he clearly did.
Yeah, you can come back in and kill it. Yeah.
Let's give it up for George. All hail King George.
Way to learn from your mistakes.
Even if he goes home Sunday, you know what? He's been the target from day one. And they should have taken him out the first week, and he's still there at 4. You know what? If there's a moral victory, he's won it. Plus, he's a celebrity now.
Yes. Everybody knows. Okay, so player of the week, who do you got, David?
Who do I got? I'm going to give it to George this week.
I would love to be able to give it to Nina, but there was a couple stops and she dropped it. She dropped her game. It happens to the best of them, but George definitely gets the spot. He didn't even have to do anything except for be nice.
And he was nice.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Have
to manipulate. It just had to be nice to the people he's working with.
And the first game, I felt like everybody he sent home, he made a point of kicking them in the throat on the way out the door when it wasn't no longer necessary.
And that is not how you handle a jury.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see a big difference. I think that George has learned more about himself and how he plays the game just in this season alone. Because if you look at the first half of the game and how George handled and conducted himself at Tribal in comparison to how he does it now, it is far less showy. He comes across as being humble. He's much softer. I don't.
After having destroyed Simon in a way nobody's ever been destroyed at Tribal Council in the history of Survivor. I mean, he didn't just make him look foolish. I mean, he was like a boxer who got hit on the first punch and was on the back. What the hell happened?
I wouldn't go as far as saying that he was a bully to Simon, but he sounded like a bully to Simon when they sat at Tribal.
But at the point where when Simon, what did he say? He goes, whoa. He goes, there's no way I can win in this situation. He goes, that's why I'm the king. It was gold, you know?
Well, I mean, he was a tyrant to him, you know. He could say whatever the hell came out of his mouth was gonna crap all over Simon and his game. Simon made himself an easy target for it. But if you look at that first half and how the way he would speak at Tribal, just even the way he would talk to Jonathan compared to how he's speaking now, he's learning as he goes.
Shawnee was a great influence on him. Yeah. And by the way, he established that people should be afraid of him. And after that, he didn't have to remind him.
I know. And that's what I mean. It's been so good. And he did bring up the idea of his game being, you know, where do I go? Do I continue playing the social game or do I play the strategic game? Well, you're at the very end. Now you have to play strategic. Social's done. Like as of this moment.
But he really chose what he regarded as a social.
But as soon as Nina goes, it can't be social anymore. As long as he can pivot back into strategic, like he was at the very beginning, if he can pivot back into strategic.
Well, strategic and social are now the same thing for him because he wants to take his social
and I think
person he wants to be at the end.
Yeah, and I think that they have to be because he isn't a challenge beast, because there's not a high likelihood of him winning the challenge he needs to cement the spot where he gets to pick who comes along. He has to be even on both of those, right? Strategic and social. Because he's still going to depend on someone else feeling safe enough.
Maybe again, you know, we had this talk can they play an idol this week at 4? I think they can.
Yeah, now, I don't know with Australia's rules. It's 5 in the US traditionally. I don't know.
But they do final 3s every year.
So it's a whole different deal, right? Yes. In the new era, yes, they do the 3. So
if he can play an idol, if an idol is possible, he should pull out all stops to find one.
I don't think they're going to put an idol. If there's going to be a twist, there's a twist. But
I think there's an idol sitting out there. I just think it's hidden real well. I think it's been sitting out there since Sean left.
No one's gotten it. Yeah.
I think they're searching for it every day. And I even made the point on one of the Facebook pages. I go, you know, a bunch of people searching the jungle and finding nothing is not exactly good TV.
No, it's not.
And you know what else I've learned about Survivor is a bunch of people searching the jungle and finding a bird cage. It's not really good TV. I'm sorry.
It's not always the best.
Am I crapping on a U.S. Survivor again? My bad.
Okay, so we've got... Oh, and speaking of Jonathan, by the way, I guess his Twitter was hacked. Did you see this?
No.
He hasn't tweeted at all, like in a week or something.
You're kidding.
Yeah, and like a lot of our fans out there have mentioned it. We've got a couple of podcasters that are like, where are the Jonathan tweets? Because if you haven't followed Jonathan's Twitter, I advise you to, because they're
he's been awesome.
Hilarious. But nothing for the old JLP. Okay, speaking of him, somebody hacked it, and I mean, as we know, like it's not the best management team on staff right now, so it's not getting fixed. So, okay. Going in with Jonathan, we're going to throw out our farewells, and you're going to let me know what you think, which one is the best, because we had good ones this week. All right. In episode 21, we have, in Survivor, it doesn't matter if you start as a king or a pawn. You can still win if you make the winning move. There's one. And in 22, we have, in a game of perception and deception, humanity trumps it all. I'm going to go with the first one. I think
21.
Yeah.
Am I doing that right? Doesn't matter.
Well, it's more like 12 in your position. You're in Mirror.
Okay, well, 21 is what I'm going with.
I made 21. Damn it. Yeah, I agree.
I can do this, like one of these.
There you go. Pulling out some sweet moves.
Yeah, not so much.
Oh, and David.
way too old and way too
Not
pale
cool
to even
enough.
try that.
Sorry.
It's like Rob Lowe trying to dance in the West Wing. It was pathetic, if you recall.
Yeah, vividly uncomfortable.
Yes.
Okay, guys. So here's the deal. We have our finale coming up this weekend, right? We are going to air. Because it is airing at the beginning of the week, we do not want to wait till the end of the week to do any coverage on the finale. So we are shooting for Tuesday night. Coming on here. Hope that you can join us in the chat at the time. Same time as per usual, just on Tuesday night. We may have a special guest to kind of break down some comparisons for us. One of our buddies who knows a thing or two about writing and Survivor, and might have something interesting to say.
And actually, he probably doesn't really know as much as he thinks he does, but it's impressive to watch him try.
We like to sit and listen. We do. All right, guys. So you can send us an email. Send us an email. Yeah, David can give. There you go. Send us an email.
There we go. It's on the screen.
Tally the votes. ch@gmail.com. Just say hi. Just literally get right on your phone, hit your little Gmail marker, type "Hey guys" and send. That's enough.
And I just want to say to all you, dozens of people that are listening to us, you've disappointed me with the lack of an email. Even my own mother hasn't sent me an email. It's very upsetting.
Well,
of course, my
David,
mother doesn't know anything about Survivor, but
maybe
you would think she could just say, "Hey, you looked really good," even though I don't. It's okay. It's my mom, right?
Yeah. I mean, some people like to smoke, to throw, blow smoke up people's asses. Moms don't do that. They don't do that. They tell you how it is.
Before we wrap it up, I wanted to do one more thing.
You got it.
Okay. I want to run through the jury.
Okay.
And you tell me first and second who you think they would vote for if it was a final four, right? Like
okay, are you writing it down?
Huh?
Are you writing it down? Are we going to
no.
Are we going to fact check?
I just want to get your opinion to see how close it is to mine.
Okay.
So I'll say Shawnee first, although we've talked about this.
Okay, and we're doing a final four, right? Like out of the final.
They can vote for, who would they vote for out of the four people that are left?
Okay. Shawnee first, George.
And second?
Oh, who she would vote for second?
Yeah.
Probably Liz.
Okay, see, I think you have the right. I think you have it in the wrong order. I think it's Liz George.
Okay.
Okay, Haley.
George.
Absolutely. Second.
It's going to be either Liz or Matt.
I think it's Liz, but
I'm leaning towards Liz.
Okay. How about Sam?
Matt.
And I say ABG, anybody but George.
I think he votes for Matt.
I think he votes for Liz, then Matt. But you might be right, because I think he might have a little misogynist thing going on. So it could be Matt, then Liz.
Yeah, he's from the boys' team,
Okay, how about Sean? That's a tough one.
George.
See, I think Liz, then George.
Yeah, I think George.
Flick.
And then Liz. I do think it would be maybe Matt. God, it could be Matt again. You know what? I'm going to say George and then Matt.
Okay. How about Flick?
George.
Well, see, I see Liz.
I still think it'd be George. But Liz is number 2.
Well, okay. I have the other way. But you could see, okay, now Nina.
George.
Out of pure respect for the game, she grew up, she's going to, okay, George isn't in it. Who does she pick?
Liz,
right, because girls rule and that sort of thing.
Well, and Liz worked with her where no one else was willing to.
Right. Okay, here's the toughest one to figure out. I think I know the answer is Simon.
Oh, who does Simon vote for?
Yep.
Oh, he's voting for George.
He absolutely is. Do you see that?
And in fact, I would wager that Simon's vote will be the winning vote for George.
Well, I think if George gets there with anybody but Liz, it's unanimous.
Yeah, I would agree, but I think even with Liz, maybe one or two for Liz. I just can't see George not taking it. However, I do want to put that in as my side wager. I bet you that the last vote with George's name on it, if he is in the end, it's going to be Simon.
That's how they'll do it, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so here's the thing. So we all agree if George goes with pretty much anybody, he wins.
Okay? Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's assume George goes home at 4 or 3. It doesn't matter which.
Okay. Well,
okay.
if he goes out at 4, he is in the best players always land in 4, right?
Good. But who wins if the final 2 is Liz and Matt?
Liz.
I tend to agree. And what if it's Jerry and Matt?
Matt.
Jerry wins, Gabler edit, case closed.
You think so? I still don't think so. I just do not think
I don't think Matt has a vote on the jury.
Okay, I'm going to put it this way. If Jerry has a chance, let's say he is there with Matt, okay? If Jerry has a chance, it is going to completely rely on his ability to explain his game, to defend his move to hide behind George and not be a pawn, but actually have momentum in the game on his own, off his own steam. If he goes in and tries to defend his game like he did with Simon, there's no flipping way he wins it.
Well, but here's the thing. Of the two of them, who do you think has a better chance of out-talking the other?
Matt.
And it is Matt. No, he can't make a sentence.
Yeah, he can. Yep. There's
okay.
You've got to look at who the jury is.
You're assuming something that we have not seen one bit of evidence for in 24 episodes.
But this is why. Look at who the jury is. Short of having George on the jury, George will vote.
George would be on the jury in this case, and so would Liz.
George would vote for Jerry. George might be able to get a couple people to turn towards Jerry, but Matt, that's Matt's people sitting there in jury. Those are Matt's people.
He betrayed every one of them.
It doesn't matter. They have way more respect for him. They took Jerry and said, "Well, we don't care if we lose you or not." No. I don't think Jerry wins against Matt.
As the guy who picked 3 consecutive winners on 2 different shows, I'm saying Jerry wins.
I don't think he does, unless he.
This is going to be great because I can do a whole victory lap at a dance next week.
He can absolutely. Well, here's the thing: you don't get to do a full victory dance because Jerry would be your 3rd winner's pick in this season, so it doesn't count as if he was your 1st winner's pick. It's not the same thing.
But who did I really want to pick, but I didn't have the balls?
George.
Yeah, I sat there and wanted to do it.
Okay, so if Jerry can articulate why he deserves to win and convince them. Then okay, but like I said, all I've seen with George
is Jerry's defense. I mean, you could say that for everybody.
Yeah,
if they can articulate why they should win.
But we haven't had to see other people do it before jury time. We haven't had to. We saw Jerry have to do it before he's even in the final and having to defend it, and he sucked butts at it. Everyone on that jury went like this. I mean, like nobody was like, "Oh, he's got a good point." They were like, "What?" No, I mean, go back and watch the faces. No one was convinced. They were like, that's stupid. So he needs to do better. If he can do better. Now, who's to say that he doesn't sit down and have a conversation with George? And George says, you're going to have to do this, this, and this. Right. If he's going to listen to George as a mentor, then this is time for George to flip and mentor his butt off. Otherwise, his buddy Jerry doesn't get to win.
Well,
that's how
I haven't seen Matt string 3 sentences together that leads me to believe he's going to bring the jury along.
But all I've heard Jerry say is tonight's not the night. I mean, really, that's it. That's his moves. Tonight's not the night.
No. I mean, look, he tried to set up a narrative.
He did say awesome things at his tribe when they were like, "Oh, we hoped everything went well over there," and he basically told them to stuff it.
He's like, "Screw you! I would have voted all your asses out." That's a bold thing, and he can own that, right?
And if he can pull that forward and say, "Here's where my journey began, and this is what I did, and this is what I did," and you saw me
all you assholes of the Heroes tribe saw a hurt old man and wanted to throw him out. You know what I did? I crossed the river and I voted all you out.
I did, but
you know what? And
I
he darn
don't
well
think Jerry's
deserved
been
it.
able to do it. If I wish I could. I like Jerry. I don't want to come across as a not liking Jerry, but when he did that stuff with Simon, I was so disappointed because it's like, oh man, I thought you had more in you than that. That was blah. So I don't know. At this
Well, no,
point in the
I
game,
didn't love that. I gotta say, but
at this point in the game, he is a pawn. To the jury's eyes, he is a pawn. Can he convince him he's not?
I disagree.
I don't know.
The
Go
screen
back.
right now says Gabler edit for a reason. He is getting the Gabler edit the
type
entire
it
game.
in there and you put it in there. But really, go back to the last couple. Simon, go back to Simon and Nina's jury villa. Kind of listen to the chatter that's happening in the background when they're talking about Jerry. They're not impressed with what he's doing. He needs to talk his way out of it, and he could. Because I think that they want to root for him. I think.
But what do you think? What do you think the big twist is?
I don't know.
Or you think that's getting oversold just in the marketing?
It could be a marketing thing, but honestly, the twist could be that there's going to be 3. The twist could be that there's going to be 4 in the final.
Well, you know what would be amazing is if they do the vote at 4 and then say the final 3 and that's it. And they don't tell them beforehand.
We know that they like to do things without telling them beforehand.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
It's kind of Jonathan's thing. It's just like Probst likes to have, like, I don't know, 9 immunity idols and 4 advantages and a partridge in a pear tree going on at one time.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a long list.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I got nothing to defend.
U.S. Survivor watcher, folks. I'm sorry.
I got nothing to defend on it. And you want to know what? Anybody who has been a long time fan of the game or a new time fan of the game is like, wait a minute, there's too much happening here. So you're not.
Jeff, when it comes to all these twists and bullshit, I got nothing for you, buddy.
I'm sorry, David, but your days of being a lone rabble rouser, they're sinking away. And the importance
people are coming to my side.
No, the importance of your angry voice is being diminished by the masses. Okay. All right, guys, that's it. I don't have anything else. This is crazy talk. This is where we just start rambling because our drinks are gone. I am going to see you guys next week. Hoping for
on Tuesday, not Thursday.
Yes, on Tuesday. Hope the finale.
Well, Tuesday in the U.S., which is probably like Wednesday afternoon in Australia.
I know. I can't keep it. Like the time change is so different.
At 1:00 in the afternoon in Sydney, I think.
So the Australians actually, they know the future.
Yeah, they're watching us at work.
Well, I hope that work's going great for you because I'm getting ready to go to bed. So until Tuesday, guys, we will see you. You take care and see you next week.
And all hail King George.
Butt kiss.